Hello, I'm Elise Vance, the author of the channel Borrowed Lives, and I offer you fascinating stories. Like and subscribe to my channel.
In a past life, my mother was blamed for a tragedy she didn't commit. My father, a high-ranking naval commander, died in a sudden shipyard explosion, and everyone pointed fingers at her. My maternal grandparents lost their shipping legacy, falling into deep despair, while my uncle Julian was court-martialed and imprisoned for treason based on fabricated evidence. But time turned back. Reborn, they all returned to this life with hearts hardened by hatred, ready to exact their revenge on my mother, Elena. Under the sterile fluorescent lights of the military hospital, my father, Arthur, stared coldly at Elena's slightly rounded abdomen. His jaw was clenched, his eyes dark with deep-seated resentment. Elena, are you playing the phantom pregnancy card again to evade accountability? I won't fall for your manipulation this time. Suddenly, he froze. An ethereal, childlike voice echoed directly in his mind. A fake pregnancy? Does Daddy think I'm just a ghost? I'm right here, Daddy. You look so strong in your uniform. I know you can protect Mommy and me. Arthur's breath hitched. He blinked rapidly, looking utterly bewildered. Standing beside him, Uncle Julian scoffed, his face twisted in bitterness. She's just using a fake condition to buy time before she ruins us all again. This time, I'll make sure she pays for what she did. Inside the warm womb, I kicked my tiny feet against the uterine wall, frowning, Uncle Julian, Mommy isn't lying. When I finally get out of here, you're going to lift me up onto your shoulders and show me the ships, remember? Silence instantly blinked out the room. Arthur and Julian stiffened simultaneously, their expressions shifting from pure hostility to absolute shock. Even my grandparents, Robert and Beatrice, exchanged horrified, trembling glances. They had all distinctly heard that sweet, innocent baby voice. Only Lydia, my mother's deceptive stepsister, remained oblivious to the internal psychic shockwave. She mistook their sudden rigidity for cold anger. Arthur, Julian, you remember what happened last time, right? The private clinic I recommended explicitly confirmed she wasn't carrying anything. It's all a setup. Hearing her voice, a wave of sadness washed over my tiny form. That bad woman is lying again. In the last life, Mommy really was pregnant with me. But someone pushed her down the stone steps of the estate, and she lost me. She was so broken that she held a porcelain doll every day, singing to it because her mind couldn't handle the grief. I was just a wandering soul, wiping away her tears. I fought through the dark for so long just to get back into Mommy's tummy. I rubbed my cheek gently against the warmth of the womb. Mommy, don't be scared. This time, I'm going to protect you. Enough. Everyone shut up. Arthur suddenly roared, gripping his temples as his pupils dilated in sheer panic. He stared intensely at Elena's stomach, his hands trembling. Doctor, run a full ultrasound right now. Lydia's eyes widened with a flicker of panic, and she quickly grabbed Arthur's sleeve. Arthur, why waste time? We all know her history. Why go through this farce again? But Arthur brushed her off with cold efficiency. The medical staff rushed in, setting up the diagnostic equipment. When the cool conductivity gel touched Elena's skin, I wiggled with curiosity inside the womb. Wow, that's chilly. Is the doctor looking for me with that scanner? I'm right here, look. Let Daddy see me. Arthur held his breath, his eyes glued to the monitor. Julian instinctively stepped closer, while Robert and Beatrice clenched their fists so hard their knuckles turned white. Suddenly, a loud, rhythmic thumping filled the room. Thump, 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 thump. On the screen, a tiny, bean-shaped silhouette appeared, energetically kicking its miniature limbs. 14 weeks gestation, the OB-GYN announced calmly, adjusting his glasses. The fetal heartbeat is exceptionally strong and healthy. The development is perfectly normal. The color completely drained from Lydia's face. She stammered, trying to regain control of the narrative. Impossible. In the past, we saw it. She accused me of pushing her, but it was just a doll that fell out after her supposed miscarriage. Arthur, you saw it yourself. The family stood paralyzed, but what echoed in their minds wasn't Lydia's frantic denial. It was my earlier, heartbroken confession about the stone steps and the wandering soul. Arthur's expression became incredibly complex as he looked from the active little outline on the screen to Elena's confused, innocent eyes. Sensing the shift in the room, Lydia quickly pivoted, adopting a pitiful, fragile demeanor. Perhaps we truly misunderstood her back then. Maybe she was pregnant but lost it accidentally, and her mind fractured, making her cling to that doll. But even so, how can we forget what she did later? She still compromised the shipyard blueprints and ruined our family. Julian sneered, his deeply ingrained vigilance resurfacing. Exactly. So what if she's actually pregnant this time? It doesn't erase the betrayal. What kind of child comes from a deceptive woman anyway? Probably just a little curse meant to torture us further. I pouted unhappily, turning over in the amniotic fluid. Uncle, that's so mean. I'm not a curse, I'm a blessing. I came back to bring good fortune, you silly uncle. Julian choked on his own breath, instantly falling silent as the internal protest hit him. Elena looked at her family, completely bewildered by the heavy, bizarre atmosphere. What are you all talking about? Past lives? Blueprints? Aren't you happy that we're having a baby? No one answered her. They were trapped in a vortex of conflicting memories and the undeniable reality beating on the monitor. That's enough. Arthur interrupted sharply, rubbing his face. The murderous intent that had consumed him all morning had evaporated, replaced by a dull, aching confusion. Whatever happened, the child is innocent. Grandfather Robert frowned, his gaze shifting toward Lydia with a newfound hint of scrutiny. Until we have absolute certainty about everything, everyone speaks less. No rash actions. Lydia felt a jolt of panic at Robert's scrutiny, but she quickly masked it, looking deeply wrong. Of course, Father. I only want us to have a safe, happy ending this time. Her words were calculated, deliberately triggering their memories of the past life's ruin to keep their guards up. Elena, oblivious to the hidden malice, offered a bright, simple smile. Thank you, Lydia. The baby and I will do our best. Lydia choked on her own saliva, entirely thrown off by such pure, uncalculated innocence. When they returned to the family's coastal estate, the tension remained suffocating. Arthur ceased his cold threats, but remained distant and guarded. Julian moved out of the main house entirely, staying in the harbor cottage to avoid Elena. Yet, my voice echoed in his mind every time he looked at the sea. By the weekend, the fragile peace shattered. A highly classified maritime bidding dossier vanished from Grandfather Robert's private study. Search every inch of this house. Robert roared, his face darkened with fury. The loss of that document could bankrupt their shipping line all over again. Instantly, all suspicious eyes locked onto Elena. In their previous life, she had been the one to leak corporate data. Lydia stepped forward, gently supporting Beatrice while directing a worried look at Elena. Elena, you were the only one who entered the study yesterday to bring Father his tea. I know pregnancy makes you forgetful, but this is critical. Please, try to remember where you hid it. Elena looked completely lost, wringing her hands. I only brought the tea. I didn't touch any papers, I promise. I flipped around inside her belly, absolutely furious. Oh, that bad woman is setting Mommy up again. She's the one who snuck in last night with a duplicate key, took Grandpa's dossier, and shoved it right under the corner of the heavy bookshelf. I saw the whole thing from in here. You want to frame Mommy again, you snake. Arthur, Julian, Robert, and Beatrice all froze simultaneously. Their eyes snapped directly toward the massive mahogany bookshelf in the corner of the study. Beneath the carved wooden vase, the corner of a thick manila folder was barely visible. Lydia noticed their sudden gaze shift and instinctively stepped forward to block their view. Arthur, what's wrong? Why are you looking over there? Arthur's face resembled a brewing storm. His voice dropped to a deadly, icy register. Move away from the bookshelf, Lydia. Pull out the file you hid. Lydia stumbled back, her voice trembling. Arthur, I wouldn't. Pull it out. Arthur's command brooked no defiance. With shaking hands, Julian walked over and pulled the missing dossier from beneath the shelf. The setup was undeniable. Lydia burst into tears, her shoulders shaking violently as she dropped to her knees. "I did it. I'm sorry. I was just so terrified. In the past life, Elena leaked the blueprints and destroyed us. I was paralyzed by fear that she would do it again, so I thought I'd hide it safely until the bidding concluded to protect the family." Lydia's excuse was fragile and full of holes, yet seeing her weep so desperately while invoking the trauma of their past ruin caused Robert and Beatrice's expressions to soften slightly. They saw her actions as a foolish, desperate attempt to shield them from a recurring nightmare. Julian stepped forward, placing a protective hand on Lydia's shoulder. "She was just trying to safeguard us, Father. She chose the wrong method, but her heart was in the right place. Compared to a woman who deliberately plotted our downfall in the past, this is a minor lapse in judgment." I floated lazily in the amniotic fluid, blowing imaginary bubbles. Silly Uncle Julian. That bad woman didn't do it by accident. She wanted Mommy to take the fall. If Daddy hadn't looked, Mommy would have been branded a thief all over again, just like before. "You're so gullible, Uncle. I'm definitely not letting you carry me on your shoulders now." Julian's body went rigid. The hand resting on Lydia's shoulder froze, suddenly feeling heavy and misplaced. Arthur frowned, his gaze locked onto Lydia's weeping form. He didn't speak, but the blind trust in his eyes had vanished, replaced by a deep, unsettling doubt. Over the following weeks, the pattern repeated itself. Minor incidents plagued the estate: a compromised security code, a misplaced heirloom, a tainted shipment log. Every single time, the breadcrumbs were meticulously laid to point directly at my gentle, naive mother. And every time the family turned their accusatory, hardened glares toward Elena, my small, urgent inner voice would pipe up like a tiny detective, "Check the trash bin in the garden house." The missing keys are inside Lydia's makeup vanity, behind the false drawer. Initially, they fought their own skepticism. But as they quietly followed the child's mental directives, they unearthed undeniable evidence of fabrication every single time. Arthur's gaze toward Elena shifted completely. The burning hatred died out, replaced by a profound, agonizing confusion. Robert and Beatrice watched Elena's consistently vacant, innocent demeanor and compared it to Lydia's increasingly frantic, elaborate excuses upon being exposed. A heavy, prolonged silence descended upon the grandparents. Even Julian, the most stubborn of them all, could no longer jump to Lydia's defense. He simply observed Elena with a complex, searching intensity. Could they have been entirely wrong about who the monster truly was? The breaking point arrived after a maritime gala. Arthur and Julian went down to the dim, concrete underground parking structure to retrieve the vehicle, with Elena and Lydia following closely behind. Suddenly, a dozen rough men armed with iron pipes and heavy wrenches stepped out from the shadows, blocking the exits. "Long time no see, Commander," the leader sneered, tapping a pipe against his palm. "Caught you without your security detail. Today, we settle the score." "Oh, and you brought two lovely ladies? Perfect. We'll take them too." I panicked, thrashing wildly inside the womb. Oh no. This didn't happen in the past life. Why are these bad men here to hurt Daddy and Uncle Julian? "Daddy, Uncle, please be careful. They have weapons." Hearing my warning, Arthur and Julian instantly snapped into a defensive stance, backing into each other. Arthur's eyes darkened. "Watch your mouth. You won't touch a soul here." Julian glanced back over his shoulder, his face grim. "Lydia, Elena, run. Get to the upper levels now." Lydia's voice shook with theatrical terror. "No. How can we leave you behind? We're a family." But Elena, despite her simple mind, understood the raw danger of the heavy iron pipes. Cradling her stomach protectively, she blurted out, "Okay, I'm going first." Without a shred of hesitation, she spun around and sprinted toward the exit ramp. Her speed was astonishing for a pregnant woman. Arthur and Julian, witnessing her immediate flight and apparent self-preservation, felt a sickening wave of disappointment. The hatred that had begun to thaw inside them suddenly refroze. Julian let out a bitter, sarcastic laugh as he raised his fists. Of course, when things get ugly, her true, selfish nature comes out. She's exactly the same as she was in the past life, and we actually fell for her act again. Foolish for 2 lifetimes. Arthur's jaw tightened into a rigid line. He said nothing, but his eyes turned completely cold. Lydia watched Elena run, a flash of triumphant malice gleaming in her eyes before she quickly reverted to her frantic persona. Julian, Arthur, even if Elena only cares about herself, she's carrying a child. I'm too worried to leave her. I'll go bring help. With that, Lydia ran off too. But she didn't chase Elena. Instead, she slipped out a side door, hailed a waiting taxi, and drove away with a smug smile. In the dim garage, Arthur and Julian fought desperately, surrounded by a dozen burly men. Within minutes, both were bleeding. Arthur's lip was split open, and Julian's white shirt was soaked in blood from a deep gash on his shoulder. "They're flagging," the gang leader shouted, swinging his pipe. "Finish them." Just as the men surged forward, my panicked voice echoed in the family's minds. "There's no cellular signal down here, but Mommy already ran to the security booth at the gate. She called the police and grandfather. They're coming right now. Daddy, Uncle Julian, you have to hold on. Mommy, be careful, please." Suddenly, a loud, breathless scream shattered the concrete, echoing space. "Stop it. Don't you dare touch my family." Arthur's eyes widened in sheer horror. Julian, his ear ringing and bleeding heavily, could barely hear, but his face twisted with scorn as he saw Elena rushing back down the ramp, tightly gripping a thick wooden broom handle she had snatched from the guard shack. "Still pretending, Chloe?" Julian spat blood, calling her by her old name in his dazed state. "Are you back to watch us die? Is this your grand finale?" Elena ignored his venom. Seeing a heavy iron bar swinging directly toward Julian's exposed head, she screamed, "Julian!" Like a madwoman, she threw her entire body over him. The brutal impact of the iron bar struck her square across the back. Elena let out a sharp, choked cry and collapsed directly onto Julian, her body going completely limp. Within seconds, bright crimson blood began to bloom, rapidly staining her light-colored skirt. 2 fractured, horrified voices ripped through the underground garage simultaneously. "Elena!" Arthur's voice cracked so severely it was unrecognizable. Julian lay frozen beneath Elena's weight, the iron pipe clattering loudly against the concrete floor. For a single, agonizing second, the entire garage fell dead silent. Elena's fingers were still tightly locked around that wooden broom handle. She had come back. Despite Julian's mocking, despite Arthur's freezing glares, she had run right into the blades to shield them. My tiny form curled tight inside her. "Mommy, please don't sleep. Don't leave me in the dark again. Baby is scared." Arthur snapped. With a primal roar, he threw his entire weight into the nearest attacker, sending him crashing violently into a concrete pillar. Julian frantically pulled Elena into his arms, his face completely pale, his hands instantly stained with her blood. "Elena, open your eyes. Look at me." Elena's eyelashes fluttered weakly. She looked up at Julian, her foggy mind struggling to comprehend his tears. "Julian, are you okay?" Julian's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Oh no, Uncle Julian is broken." Baby wanted to pat his head, but my hands are still too tiny. Arthur dropped to his knees beside them, his hands hovering over Elena's broken body, trembling violently as if terrified that touching her would break her further. "Elena, stay with me. Look at Arthur. Arthur, the police. I called them." Her voice faded to a whisper. I know. Please don't speak." Elena weakly pressed a hand against her abdomen. "Baby, I kicked. I tried. I'm here, Mommy. I'm kicking right now. I'm not leaving you. I fought too hard to come back to you." Arthur choked on a sob. He laid his large, trembling hand over Elena's belly, his touch so unbelievably fragile it held none of the coldness of the ruthless commander he usually was. Sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder until the garage was flooded with red and blue lights. Grandfather Robert's car screeched to a halt near the entrance, and Grandmother Beatrice stumbled out before the vehicle had even fully stopped. Lydia was nowhere to be found. Of course, the bad snake ran away. She fled faster than a stray cat with stolen fish. The police locked down the scene immediately, dragging the attackers away in zip ties. Elena was lifted onto a stretcher, her face ghost white. Julian followed the paramedics like a hollow shell, staring blankly at his blood-soaked hands. "She saved me," he muttered to the empty air. "I cursed her and she saved me." Arthur gripped Julian's shoulder with bruising force, pushing him forward. "Move. Cry later. Protect them first." At the Naval Hospital, the quiet corridors erupted into chaos. Doctors and nurses swarmed Elena's gurney. "The patient has sustained severe trauma. The fetus is under acute distress. We need to stabilize them immediately." "Excuse me, I am not just a fetus. I am a very brave baby. Tiny but highly important." Arthur heard it. His eyes shut tight for a single second, absorbing the tiny voice, before he forced himself to stand straight, commanding the room with his military authority. "Deploy the chief of surgery. Use every resource. Guard this wing, no unauthorized personnel near her." As the heavy double doors of the trauma unit slammed shut, Julian sank to the tiled floor, burying his face in his blood-stained hands. Robert stood frozen against the wall, his fists clenched so hard his nails drew blood. Beatrice wept silently, her hand pressed against her mouth. 20 minutes later, Lydia hurried down the corridor. Her hair was strategically disheveled, her breath shallow. She rushed straight toward Arthur, her face a mask of frantic concern. "Arthur, thank goodness you're alive." I was so terrified. I ran as fast as I could to find a security guard, but the whole venue was in chaos. Arthur looked at her. He just looked. For the first time, Lydia's voice withered under the sheer weight of his absolute silence. Right then, Robert's phone chimed. The Port Police had just forwarded the raw, unedited security footage from the garage. Arthur took the phone from his grandfather's trembling hand and pressed play. The screen showed Elena sprinting out of the garage, immediately dialing the emergency line, and then wrenching the broom handle from the guard booth. The angle shifted to the side exit. There was Lydia. She didn't seek help. She didn't call the police. She calmly climbed into a waiting dark sedan. Before the door closed, she turned toward the garage fight and smiled, a tiny, satisfied smirk. Beatrice gasped loudly, stumbling back. Lydia's face turned the color of ash. "No, Arthur, that angle is misleading. I was panicking. I didn't know what I was doing." Elena panicked and came back. Arthur's voice dropped to a terrifying whisper. "You panicked and smiled." Lydia's lips trembled violently. "Julian, you know me. I did it for you. I thought Elena was setting a trap." "Shut up." Julian finally lifted his head. His eyes were bloodshot, hollow, and furious. "You told me she abandoned us, but she took an iron bar to the spine for me. What did you do?" Lydia stepped back, completely trapped. Before she could spin another lie, the emergency doors swung open. The lead surgeon stepped out, pulling down his mask. "The mother is stable for the moment. The fetal heart rate dropped dangerously during the procedure, but it has stabilized. The next 24 hours are absolutely critical." Beatrice collapsed into a chair in sheer relief. Arthur leaned heavily against the wall, closing his eyes as a quiet, trembling tap echoed in his mind. "I'm still here, Daddy. See? I'm strong." Later that night, when Elena was moved to the ICU and Arthur was permitted to sit by her bedside, he carefully rested his hand an inch above her blanket-covered abdomen. For a long time, he couldn't speak. Then, a broken whisper escaped him. "I'm sorry. You made a lot of mistakes, Daddy. A whole mountain of them. But baby is generous, and I'm currently confined to this womb, so I will allow you to improve." Arthur's mouth trembled, and he pressed his forehead against Elena's motionless hand. "I'll prove it to you. I won't just regret it. I'll protect you." "Good. Regret is cheap. Protection is expensive." By the next morning, the police interrogation rooms were burning hot. The captured thugs initially claimed they were hired by an old naval adversary of Arthur's. But Arthur's high-profile legal team tore through the digital payment trails within hours. The money trace led directly to a shell corporation registered under a cousin of Lydia's personal assistant. The assistant was picked up at a border checkpoint. Under intense pressure, she confessed completely. The directive from Lydia had been sickeningly precise: ambush the brothers. If the pregnant woman gets in the way, ensure the injury terminates the pregnancy. Make it look like old military blowback. Grandfather Robert read the official transcript twice in his study. The second time, his hands shook so violently the paper rattled. Beatrice sat down slowly, her eyes blank with horror. She wanted us to believe Elena caused the attack, just like she did before. Arthur's face was completely devoid of emotion. No, this time she wanted Elena to die before any of us could discover the truth. Lydia was legally barred from entering the hospital wing. When she tried to push past the naval guards, weeping and screaming that she was the rightful daughter, Julian met her at the elevator doors. "Julian, please. Arthur is being brainwashed by her." Lydia sobbed, reaching for his arm. "You know what Elena did to you in the past. I only wanted to protect you from prison." Julian looked at her for a very long time. The sister he had shielded for 2 lifetimes suddenly looked like a stranger. "Did Elena forge the treason documents against me while she was bleeding out in a hospital bed? Did she slip the duplicate key to Father's study?" "No, you did." He turned his back on her. Lydia froze, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. Her strongest shield had shattered. That afternoon, Elena finally woke up. Her eyes were foggy, her lips dry. The very first thing she did was reach down to touch her abdomen. Arthur moved closer instantly. "The baby is safe, Elena. The heartbeat is strong." Elena's shoulders dropped in profound relief. Then, her eyes drifted to Julian, who was standing near the door like a ghost. "Julian, your shoulder. Is it okay?" Julian took 1 step forward, then stopped, as if the floor between them had turned into an abyss. "I'm fine." Elena offered a weak, tired smile. "That's good." Julian's face twisted in agony. "I called you a parasite. I blamed you for everything." Elena blinked slowly. "You were just angry. But you're Arthur's brother." Such a simple, unconditional answer. It cut deeper than any blade. Julian lowered his head, tears slipping onto the linoleum. "I don't deserve that." Arthur reached out to gently take Elena's hand, but the moment his fingers brushed hers, she flinched. It wasn't a violent movement, just a small, instinctive pull away. But the entire room froze. Elena looked confused by her own reaction, whispering, "I'm sorry." Arthur's eyes turned bloodshot. "No, Elena. Never apologize to me." Elena's fingers curled tightly over the edge of her blanket. "I don't remember the past life you all hate me for, but I remember this one. In this one, you looked at me like I was already guilty." Her voice wasn't angry, it was just quiet. Arthur could not breathe. Elena turned her face toward the window, away from them all. "I'm tired now." That was not forgiveness. It was a door closing firmly in their faces. For 3 full days, Arthur sat beside that closed door. He didn't push, he didn't beg, and he didn't touch her without permission. He simply guarded her. Concurrently, he ordered a complete, ruthless reinvestigation of every single accusation they had ever leveled against Elena in their previous life. No assumptions, no biases, only hard, cold evidence. The first shocking truth came from the private family physician Lydia had highly recommended. This was the doctor who had previously claimed Elena's pregnancy was entirely fabricated. Arthur's legal team traced the doctor's accounts and unearthed massive, hidden deposits originating directly from Lydia. Confronted with federal bank fraud charges, the doctor broke down. He confessed that Lydia had paid him a fortune to forge medical reports to make Elena look like a manipulative liar. He even admitted she had been actively inquiring about chemical compounds that could induce a natural-looking miscarriage. By evening, his license was permanently revoked, and he was led away in handcuffs. Grandmother Beatrice watched the confession video on a tablet and wept hysterically. She really was pregnant back then, and we believed a fabricated medical sheet over our own daughter's tears. The second truth came from the grand stone staircase of the old family estate. I didn't remember everything clearly at first. Past life memories arrived like broken, waterlogged toys. A cold stone railing, Elena's hand reaching out, a sharp scratch on her wrist from a heavy metal bracelet, and then the long, terrifying fall into darkness. As Mommy slept peacefully, the memory surged back so violently that I kicked with all my might. No. The steps. The stone stairs. It was the bracelet. Mommy tried to hold the railing, but that bad woman shoved her hard from behind. Arthur stood up so fast his chair crashed to the floor. Julian rushed into the room. "What is it?" "The staircase," Arthur whispered, his face completely pale. Grandfather Robert immediately reopened the old archival security files. In their past life, the specific camera overlooking the stairs had been marked as malfunctioning on the day of Elena's tragic fall. But this time, Robert dug into the master mainframe logs. The camera hadn't malfunctioned. It had been manually disabled using a high-clearance security pass belonging exclusively to Lydia. Furthermore, Beatrice found an old photograph taken right after Elena's past miscarriage. There, clearly visible on Elena's pale wrist, was a deep scratch mark. Its jagged shape perfectly matched the unique, custom-made diamond bracelet Lydia wore every day. They sat in the dark study, the truth staring them in the face. No one spoke. The silence was suffocating. The third truth shattered Grandfather Robert's shipping empire. The missing bidding dossier from this life had prompted him to meticulously review the past life's catastrophic data leak. Back then, everyone believed Elena had stolen and sold the naval shipping blueprints, causing their bankruptcy. Robert dug directly into the legacy encrypted servers. The digital footprints didn't lie. Lydia's personal laptop had accessed the blueprints at midnight. The offshore payments from their primary corporate rival had been channeled into an account under Lydia's college roommate's name. Elena's digital signature had been clumsily superimposed onto the file transfers afterward, a crude, malicious forgery. Robert sat motionless in his leather chair until dawn. When he finally stepped out, he looked decades older. "We lived an entire life punishing an innocent soul," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I will not die in this life protecting the actual monster." Beatrice held his arm, her eyes swollen. "If this child hadn't spoken to our hearts, we would have murdered our own flesh and blood with our hatred." Inside the womb, I curled up tightly, feeling a bit conflicted. "Grandma can hear baby now?" Grandma called me blood. I like Grandma a little bit now, but only a tiny bit. She was terrifying before. The fourth truth belonged exclusively to Uncle Julian. He reopened the military tribunal files that had sent him to a penal colony in the previous life. The forged signatures, the planted money trail in his quarters, the bribed witness who suddenly fled the country. Arthur's elite intelligence team tracked the corrupt notary down at an international airport. Faced with a lifetime in a maximum security prison, the notary confessed completely. Lydia had paid him to frame Julian because Julian had started tracking the missing corporate funds. She destroyed his military career before he could expose her. Julian stood outside Elena's hospital room that night, clutching the printed confession until the paper wrinkled and tore under his grip. Through the glass window, Elena stirred and looked up at Arthur. "Why does Julian always stand outside in the dark?" Arthur adjusted her blanket, his voice thick with emotion. "Because he is buried in shame." Elena looked down at her lap. "I was always so scared of him." Outside the door, Julian heard her words. His broad shoulders folded inward, and he let out a silent, agonizing sob. For the first time, he understood a brutal truth. His profound guilt did not give him an automatic right to be forgiven. The fifth and final truth almost pushed Arthur over the edge. Lydia tried to sabotage his vehicle again, this life, not the past. It was the exact same pattern: a late-night naval strategy meeting, a car left in the isolated underground garage, and a bribed mechanic who should have been nowhere near Arthur's vehicle. Suddenly, a wave of intense cold washed over me. "The car smells wrong." "Daddy, don't get in." Baby remembers this exact sound, these broken brakes. "Don't touch the door." Arthur froze, his hand hovering over the handle. Julian, walking right beside him, stopped instantly. Naval security swarmed the area and dragged the mechanic out from beneath a nearby SUV. The brake lines had been cleanly severed. The mechanic confessed within 2 hours under intense interrogation. Lydia had paid him a fortune. She wanted Arthur dead before he could finalize the legal paperwork to strip her of her status in the family trust. Arthur sat alone in the dim garage long after the police left. Julian stood beside him in the silence. Finally, the hardened commander covered his face with his hands. I hated the woman who spent her life mourning me, and I trusted the snake who engineered my execution. Lydia knew the walls were closing in, so she targeted Julian. He had always been her easiest shield. In the past, she only had to shed a few strategic tears, mention her sacrifices, and he would instantly stand between her and the world. She cornered him near the harbor cottage, her tears falling beautifully. Julian, you have to listen to me. Arthur is being completely manipulated. Elena is using some twisted psychological trick on him. You remember what she did to you. You suffered the most because of her. Julian stared at her. His eyes were entirely dead. Did Elena push herself down the stone steps, Lydia? Lydia froze, her breath catching. Did she forge my court-martial papers while she was bleeding out in a hospital bed? Julian's voice rose, thick with suppressed fury. Did she leak the naval blueprints while she held a porcelain doll, singing lullabies to the baby she lost? She saved my life in that garage while I was cursing her name. What did you do? Lydia's tears instantly stopped. For a single second, the beautiful facade shattered and pure, ugly hatred twisted her features. Realizing she had lost him, she spun around and walked away. Julian did not follow. Elena was eventually discharged and returned to the coastal estate under heavy security. Arthur had transformed the entire East Wing into a fortified, state-of-the-art recovery area. No Lydia. No unvetted staff. Elena stood at the entrance, looking at the massive house as if it might bite her. Arthur stood beside her, keeping a respectful distance. If you don't feel safe here, Elena, I will arrange a private villa by the coast. Anywhere you want. Elena looked at him, surprised. You won't get angry? Arthur's chest tightened painfully. I lost the right to be angry with you a long time ago. Elena gently touched her rounded belly. Baby, do we want to stay? I kicked once, sending a warm pulse into her mind, only if Daddy behaves himself. Elena blinked, a small smile touching her lips. The baby kicked. Arthur looked away quickly, but I saw his eyes flush a deep, emotional red. He behaved. For a few weeks, a strange, quiet peace settled over the estate. Beatrice brought fresh broth every morning, always knocking and asking for permission before entering. Robert moved all corporate and naval documents entirely out of the house, ensuring no one could ever frame Elena again. Julian stood guard outside the wing like a silent, repentant statue. Elena slowly began to smile again. But Lydia wasn't completely finished. Dangerous people don't just disappear. They wait behind closed doors. The final trap was sprung during a high-profile military charity gala hosted at the estate. Arthur had planned it meticulously, installing hidden cameras and alerting naval intelligence, because he wanted Lydia to make her final desperate move where everyone could see it. The estate filled with dignitaries, naval officers, and prominent families. Lydia arrived in a pale, elegant gown, her eyes red, perfectly playing the part of a tragic, unfairly exiled daughter. She avoided Arthur and Julian, but her venomous gaze never left Elena. Elena, in her simple-minded innocence, actually looked at Arthur with concern. Lydia looks so sad, Arthur. Arthur's voice was incredibly soft, full of hidden steel. Stay close to me, Elena. But a few minutes later, a catering staff member approached Elena, whispering that her mother needed her urgently on the second floor. Elena nodded and walked toward the grand stone staircase alone. Inside the womb, my entire tiny body froze. The cold stone railing. The high steps. The exact same turn.no. No, it's happening again. It's the staircase. Daddy. Uncle Julian. Look behind Mommy. Arthur dropped his champagne glass, the crystal shattering loudly across the marble floor. Julian was already moving, sprinting through the crowd like a bullet. Lydia stepped out from behind the heavy velvet drapes at the top of the landing. Her face was contorted, her hands outstretched, aiming directly for Elena's exposed back. Elena turned around, her eyes wide and confused. Lydia. Lydia didn't look sweet or pitiful anymore. Her expression was completely hollow, dripping with malice. But before her fingers could even brush Elena's fabric, Arthur lunged forward, slamming his hand down onto Lydia's wrist with a crushing grip. Simultaneously, Julian threw his arms around Elena, pulling her forcefully away from the edge of the stone steps and shielding her with his own body. Security! Detain her! Grandfather Robert's voice roared across the ballroom, silencing the entire gala. Beatrice stood frozen at the top of the stairs, her face entirely bloodless. For a fraction of a second, Lydia tried to scramble for her mask. "What are you doing?" "Arthur, let go of me." "I was just trying to help Elena down the stairs," she stumbled. Arthur's grip tightened until her bones popped. He pointed directly to a small black dome nestled in the crown molding. "The tactical camera is directly above you, Lydia." Julian pulled out his military-grade tablet, turning the screen toward the gathering crowd of high-ranking officials. It played the live, high-definition security feed, Lydia hiding behind the curtain, Lydia checking the hallway to ensure no one was watching, and Lydia lunging with clear, lethal intent at a pregnant woman's back. There was no escape. No tears could fix this. No past life trauma could excuse it. Elena stood behind Julian, her small frame trembling violently. "Lydia, why do you hate me so much? What did I do?" That simple, heartbreaking question shattered Lydia's remaining sanity completely. She stopped crying. Instead, she threw her head back and let out a sharp, ugly laugh that echoed off the high ceilings. "Why?" Lydia shrieked, her eyes locked onto Elena with pure poison. "Because you get everything without ever having to work for it. You're stupid. You're utterly useless. You don't even know how to play the game, yet everyone rushes to save you." I puffed up my chest inside the womb, utterly offended. "Hey, who are you calling useless? I am a highly advanced, powerful baby. The future treasure of this entire family." Lydia pointed a shaking, manic finger at Elena's stomach. "In the last life, I took it all. I made you look like a psychotic lunatic. I watched you carry that pathetic porcelain doll and weep every single day. I watched Arthur curse you and Julian drag you through the mud while I stood right beside them as the golden child." Arthur's face went completely dead, a terrifying, silent rage radiating from his posture. But Lydia was too far gone to stop. The doctor was easy. She laughed hysterically as naval guards surrounded her. "A few $1,000s and you were never pregnant." The stone steps were easy, one good shove, and your brat was erased from existence. "You were so dumb you sang lullabies to a piece of painted clay." Elena's eyes went entirely blank as the horror of those words cut through her fragile mind. Julian immediately moved his large hands to cover her ears, his own eyes wet with tears. "Don't listen to her, Elena. Look at me, don't listen." Lydia spun on Julian, her voice screeching. "And you, Julian. So righteous, yet so incredibly easy to break. A few forged signatures, a planted offshore account, and you walked right into a penal colony still blaming her for your downfall." Julian's voice was deadly calm, absolute ice. "Keep talking, Lydia. Federal intelligence is recording every single word." Lydia laughed even louder, completely unhinged as the naval guards grabbed her arms. "The shipping blueprints? Me. The rival corporate payouts? Me. Arthur's sabotaged brakes? Me. All of it, me. And none of you blind fools ever saw it because hating Elena felt so much better than admitting you were being played." Arthur stepped directly into her line of sight, his towering frame casting a dark shadow over her. "You used our grief as a leash, Lydia. I will never let you hold it again." Lydia screamed at him, her heels dragging against the marble as the guards began pulling her toward the exit. "You loved me before she ruined everything. You chose me." "No," Arthur's voice cut through her, screeching like a razor. "She forgot how to hate. You remembered only how to destroy." That final sentence hit Lydia harder than the cold steel handcuffs that snapped around her wrists. Naval intelligence officers led her out through the grand entrance, her frantic screams echoing down the long driveway until the doors were firmly shut. Elena was trembling so violently that her legs began to give way. Arthur desperately wanted to scoop her up into his arms, but remembering the way she had flinched before, he forcefully held himself back. Then Elena looked up through her tears, her voice barely a whisper. "Arthur, can you hold me?" Arthur's military composure shattered completely. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her with infinite gentleness, so carefully, as if finally understanding that true strength meant protecting, not controlling. Inside the womb, I did a happy little flip. Baby approves. But Daddy is still on probation. Keep up the good work. Arthur let out a ragged sound that was half laugh, half sob, pressing a soft kiss into Elena's hair. The legal proceedings that followed over the next few months became a massive national scandal. Inside Elena's belly, I learned a whole new array of complex adult vocabulary: conspiracy to commit murder, corporate espionage, evidence tampering, high treason, and falsification of medical records. My baby vocabulary was getting incredibly advanced. I was practically a legal prodigy before even taking my first breath. Every single accomplice fell like dominoes. The corrupt family doctor lost his credentials and was sentenced to a federal penitentiary. The thugs from the underground garage took plea deals, turning state's evidence against Lydia to shorten their own sentences. The mechanic who had severed Arthur's brake lines testified in vivid detail about the cold, calculating nature of Lydia's orders. The rival shipping company was hit with massive federal lawsuits and structural investigations. Lydia's assets were frozen entirely. Her public persona as the sweet, devoted sister died a brutal death in the media. At the final sentencing hearing, she wore a plain gray jumpsuit, stripped of her designer clothes and jewelry. Without her carefully applied makeup and calculated tears, she looked incredibly small and hollow. The federal judge spent nearly an hour reading aloud the extensive list of her crimes. Finally, the gavel struck the wooden block. 25 years in a maximum security military prison. No parole. Lydia's mouth opened in silent horror. She turned her desperate, hollow eyes toward the gallery. Arthur stood firmly behind Elena's chair, his hand resting protectively near her shoulder. Julian sat on her other side, while Robert and Beatrice watched from the front row. No one moved a muscle to help her. "Elena!" Lydia's voice cracked, echoing desperately across the courtroom. Tell them you forgive me. You're simple, you don't understand malice. Say something to the judge." Elena looked at her with a profound, quiet sadness. She gently rested both hands on her rounded stomach. "I don't understand why you hated me so much, Lydia. But I know you tried to hurt my baby. That is enough." Lydia was dragged from the courtroom, her frantic screams fading down the corridor. Inside the womb, I stuck out an imaginary tongue. "Goodbye, bad snake. Enjoy your new home. No baby visits for you." Julian covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. "Are you laughing, Uncle? Baby is very serious. Justice is serious business." Julian let out a broken laugh through his tears. Even the unborn baby was scolding them now. After the final verdict, the family's healing began, not with grand gestures, but with quiet repentance. Grandfather Robert called a formal meeting in the estate's grand hall. In front of everyone, he formally signed over a massive maritime trust fund and the title of the coastal villa directly to Elena and me. "I failed as a protector," the old man said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "This is not a gift, Elena. It is restitution." Elena looked at the documents, then up at Arthur. "Should I sign it?" Arthur's expression softened completely. "Only if you want to, Elena. It belongs to you anyway." Elena thought about it very hard, then slowly signed her name. Grandmother Beatrice wept silently as she watched. "I don't expect you to forgive me today, my sweet girl." Elena offered a simple, honest nod. "Okay." That quiet "okay" hurt them more than any screaming match could have, because it was entirely raw. Elena didn't know how to manipulate, she just spoke her truth. Julian's apology was the hardest to witness. He came to Elena's room holding a tiny, hand-carved wooden rattle. It was remarkably clumsy and uneven. Uncle Julian clearly possessed zero crafting talent. Baby is highly concerned about this woodwork, Uncle. Julian looked slightly offended, glancing at Elena's belly. It's my first time trying to build a toy. Baby hopes it is your last time. Stick to driving ships, Uncle. Elena laughed softly at his expression, and the entire room went completely still. Her laughter had become the family's rarest, most guarded treasure. Julian knelt entirely beside her chair. I spent 2 lifetimes projecting my own failures onto the person who took an iron bar for me. I am so sorry, Elena. Elena looked at him quietly. I was always so scared of you. Tears spilled over Julian's eyes. I know, but I will spend the rest of this life ensuring you and your baby never have to be scared again. I tapped a gentle foot against the uterine wall. You may carry me on your shoulders later, Uncle, but absolutely no spinning. Baby has strict standards. Arthur apologized last. He didn't wait because he was proud. He waited because he knew Elena needed time to process everything. One evening, under a brilliant crescent moon, Elena couldn't sleep. Arthur was sitting on a chair right outside her open door, just as he had done every single night. Elena called out to him softly. Arthur, why do you sleep out there? He stood up, walking exactly 3 steps into the room before stopping respectfully. To ensure nothing ever breaches your peace again. You can rest, you know. I know, Arthur's throat moved convulsively. But I used my past memories as a weapon against an innocent woman. I don't know if I have the right to rest yet. Elena looked down at her stomach. Baby remembers everything. I know, Arthur's eyes flushed a deep, painful red. Do you still fear me, Elena? No. Do you think you could ever love me again? Arthur closed his eyes, bracing for the silence. But Elena simply reached out, her small, warm fingers gently wrapping around his large, calloused hand. I don't want to be brave all by myself anymore, Arthur. Arthur dropped to his knees, burying his face in her palm as his chest heaved with silent, healing sobs. I rolled over happily in the warm amniotic fluid. Good. Mommy is warm. Daddy has vastly improved. Baby will continue active supervision. The final months of the pregnancy passed in profound, peaceful tranquility. The red carpets were entirely removed from the estate, and the stone staircase was fitted with state-of-the-art safety railings. Grandfather Robert stepped back from daily naval operations, creating a strict new family charter. No accusation could ever become a punishment without absolute, undeniable proof. On a crisp, rainy autumn morning, my time finally came. Arthur held Elena's hand through every single contraction, his face pale with anxiety. When I finally crossed the threshold into the bright, roaring world, I wailed at the top of my lungs. I had waited 2 entire lifetimes for this moment. Of course, I had a lot to say. Arthur wept harder than I did, gently placing me onto Elena's chest. She looked exhausted, beautiful, and utterly filled with wonder. She's so tiny, Arthur. I squeaked, thoroughly insulted. Tiny? Mommy, I am an absolute titan. I took down a criminal mastermind from inside your belly. Julian walked in last, standing hesitantly at the door. Elena smiled warmly at him. Come meet her, Julian. With trembling arms, the hardened naval officer took me into his embrace, holding me as if I were made of spun glass. Support her head, Beatrice whispered, wiping her eyes. I am, Julian whispered back, his voice cracking completely. Slowly, carefully, he lifted me up just a little higher, not too high, and with absolutely no spinning. Just enough so I could see his face clearly. The promise from the very beginning had finally been fulfilled. We still had a long journey ahead of us. The deep scars of the past didn't vanish overnight. But the lies were gone, turning to absolute ashes. The stone steps were just stairs now. The garage was just a garage. And my mother never had to fight to be believed ever again. On my 100-day celebration, Arthur held Elena close with one arm and cradled me with the other. Robert raised a crystal glass to the family. In a past life, we let hatred blind us and lost everything. In this life, a child who had not yet been born taught us to seek the truth before casting a stone. Julian leaned over, gently tapping my nose. Thank you, little detective. You saved our family. I reached out, tightly grabbing his thumb with my tiny fist. No, uncle. Mommy saved you all first. I just made sure you heard her.